Those who would slaughter innocent men, women, and children must know that the United States will do more than simply strengthen our defenses. We will continue to use every element of our national power to disrupt, to dismantle, and defeat the violent extremists who threaten us, whether they are from Afghanistan or Pakistan, Yemen or Somalia, or anywhere.
Yemen's Houthi fighters say at least 63 civilians, including 28 children, have been killed in U.S. air raids in the southeastern Abyan province. The Houthis say 90 people were also injured in Bakazan village. The residents of the area have dismissed claims that al-Qaeda members were targeted in the attacks. The Yemeni lawmakers also called for an investigation into the U.S. raids.
Those who would slaughter innocent men, women, and children must know that the United States will do more than simply strengthen our defenses. We will continue to use every element of our national power.
As the U.S. celebrated the election of a new president, these Afghans searched for dead bodies after a U.S. airstrike hit a wedding party. It happened in a village near Kandahar. A member of parliament from the area says 35 civilians were killed and 38 injured, but there's another 50 people unaccounted for, potentially buried beneath the rubble.
A lot of people died. We were going to a wedding. We were 12 family members. Only 4 of us survived. And it was like doomsday. They bombed us from 3 o'clock in the morning till late evening.
Those who would slaughter innocent men, women, and children.
Confirm that's bombs dropping on Mazdak. Fucking hell! I fucking told you nothing but bacteria would live!
Those who would slaughter innocent men, women, and children.
The U.S. operation in western Afghanistan killed some 90 civilians. The U.S. at first denied that any civilians had been killed, but after 2 investigations and the emergence of photographic evidence of dozens of bodies, including children, the U.S. said that 33 civilians had died.
We will continue to use every element of our national power to disrupt, to dismantle, and defeat the violent extremists who threaten us, whether they are from Afghanistan or Pakistan.
The U.S. forces in Afghanistan have killed 4 civilians in a cross-border artillery attack on Pakistan's North Waziristan region. The victims are 2 women and 2 children.
Those who would slaughter innocent men, women, and children.
After the bloodiest battle of the entire Afghan war, 8,000 Taliban soldiers surrendered to the Northern Alliance and U.S. Special Forces under guarantee that their lives would be spared. Today, up to 3,000 of those men lie in an unmarked desert grave, and American soldiers stand accused by numerous eyewitnesses of being involved in their disappearance.
For those who question the character and cause of my nation, I ask you to look at the concrete actions we have taken in just 9 months. On my first day in office, I prohibited, without exception or equivocation, the use of torture by the United States of America.
I think the scale of it, if you talk about thousands of bodies and a cover-up of those bodies, is comparable to thousands of bodies in New York. Now, that is very striking to me, and that's why I think this one will not go away.
It now seems clear that the Bush administration resisted efforts to pursue investigations of an Afghan warlord named General Dostum, who was on the CIA payroll. It's now come out there were hundreds of Taliban prisoners under his care who got killed. Right. Some were suffocated in a steel container, others were shot, possibly buried in mass graves. Would you call for an investigation into possible war crimes in Afghanistan?
Yeah, the indications that this had not been properly investigated just recently was brought to my attention. So what I've asked my national security team to do is to collect the facts for me that are known, and we'll probably make a decision in terms of how to approach it once we have all the facts gathered up.
But you wouldn't resist categorically an investigation?
I think that there are responsibilities that all nations have, even in war. And
That's about the past. It takes a lot to avoid a very simple truism that if true, these would be crimes. And we prosecute crimes. We call people criminals who commit them. It's very easy to say. All you need to have is the principles and the courage to say it.
The claims from Russell Tice, Mr. Bush's admission that he greenlit interrogations that included waterboarding, are these not exactly the kinds of evidence that Mr. Obama said his prosecutors would pursue?
He did, and what's troubling us is that he doesn't simply say the easiest possible thing. That's the conspicuous silence. The easiest thing is to say, I must prosecute war crimes, because we have treaties that obligate us to do that, and any war crimes that we discover will be prosecuted. It's a very easy thing to say. It happens to be the law, and what really scares many of us is that nobody's saying that in the Obama camp.
Let's say some kind of prosecution ensues. How does it get decided whether it's the grunts who did the actual torturing and waterboarding and what else not who get pursued in this, or the people who told them to do it?
Well, Keith, I have very little sympathy for the people that committed this torture. I've heard President Obama say, you know, we don't want talented people at the CIA looking over their shoulders. Well, those talented people in this circumstance would be torturers. But in reality, nobody thinks that they're going to be prosecuted. They have something called an estoppel defense, where they can say that they were told by people like John Yoo and others that what they did was legal. That does not protect the president and vice president, and they're the ones and the people just below them who deserve to be investigated, and they must be prosecuted if they've committed war crimes, or we will shred 4 treaties and at least 4 statutes. And the problem here is that it wouldn't make Obama an apologist. It would make him an accessory. He would be preventing the investigation of war crimes. How could he go from that and say that he's all about the rule of law?
Our third story in the countdown, more tortured logic about torture. The Obama administration coming to the rescue of Bush-era justice. The DOJ is asking an appeals court to dismiss a lawsuit accusing John Yoo of having authorized torture of a terror suspect, filing an amicus brief in support of Mr. Yoo, claiming federal law does not allow claims against counselors who advise the president on national security issues. They're concerned. Why is the Obama Justice Department doing this?
I don't know, Keith. The timing could not be worse. I mean, the president literally has gotten onto a plane this evening to go to Norway to accept the Nobel Prize, while his Justice Department is effectively gutting a major part of Nuremberg. This is actually the anniversary of the judge's trial. It's December 4th, so it just passed, 1947. And as I point out on my blog tonight, if you go through the defendants of that trial, 3 of them held positions very much like John Yoo's. They were legal advisors to the Ministry of Justice. We insisted on their being prosecuted. And now the Obama administration is arguing not only that they shouldn't be prosecuted, because the administration has basically blocked any prosecution for torture, but it's now saying that you shouldn't even be able to sue them civilly. Now, it's not just a national disgrace to do that on the eve of accepting this prize. It's an international disgrace.
I don't believe that anybody is above the law. On the other hand, I also have a belief that we need to look forward as opposed to looking backwards.
Well, it's very clear that President Obama does not want to see anyone prosecuted for war crimes. And you have this sort of performance of Hamlet on the Potomac as they stare at this crime, which is well-defined. You have Bush officials who have admitted they tortured people. The Red Cross said they tortured people. And yet Holder and Obama are still saying, we're still looking at it. They need to appoint a special prosecutor. The idea that the Justice Department could investigate itself on an issue of this kind, let alone these other high-ranking officials, is absurd. It is a rejection of the most basic ethical standards governing conflicts of interest.
And that we, the people, will uphold our fundamental values as vigilantly as we protect our security. Once again, America's moral example must be the bedrock and the beacon of our global leaders.
He said on his second day in office, I will hold myself as president to a new standard of openness. Information will not be withheld just because I say so.
Ooh, look at that. They got a because, Mark, the president has, in this case, welcome back.
What I meant.
You didn't.
General Taguba saying that there are photographs of rape, not just at Abu Ghraib, but at a half a dozen U.S. detention facilities. And there is some confusion right now as to whether those may be the photos that the president said he's not going to release.
I don't think there's confusion. I think the Pentagon has been very clear in a statement saying that the story is not true. I want to speak generally about some reports I've witnessed over the past few years in the British media. And in some ways I'm surprised it filtered down. Let's just say if I wanted to read a write-up today of how Manchester United fared last night in the Champions League Cup, I might open up a British newspaper. If I was looking for something that bordered on truthful news, I'm not entirely sure it would be the first stack of clips I picked up.
It's not about justice, it's not about agenda, it's not about mobilizing people, it's about dialing for corporate dollars. These two parties have sold the U.S. government and the American people to the highest bidders.
The United States of America is a terrorist base of operations.